Welcome to the Grandpa Channel, where stories don't fade, they get recorded. I'm Steve Harris. My grandkids call me Rivers. This podcast is where grandpas and grandchildren pull up a chair, turn on the mic, and let her rip. Grandpa stories are chock full of wisdom, life lessons, and frankly, funny as hell. Your stories are the magic elixir to help your grandkids navigate Mr. Toad's wild ride, aka life. Let's Grandpa. Welcome to the Grandpa Channel. I have an esteemed guest today. It's my oldest son's, Bradford Lewis, and you are named after my father. And my father's first name was Lewis, and we kids back in the day thought Lewis was a boring name. It turned out to be a rather fiery name with an family, but that's another story for another day. At any rate, so his full name is Bradford Lewis Harris, and he is the second of my 7 children, and he was spectacularly easy to raise. He's got a great sense of humor. He's smart as heck. And I am thrilled to have you on the Grandpa Channel.
Good to be here.
So this lovely room used to be his bedroom that we've changed into a supercharged studio. When you think about either of your grandfathers, what kind of jumps into your mind, Brad?
I think they're similar in a lot of ways, and then they couldn't be more different in a lot of ways too. But just like 2 guys that, man, super hard workers, and very successful in their own world, and pretty inspiring that way. Personalities can be more different as well, and I think
Contrast personality.
it took me a little while to get on a really good relationship with Grandpa Lou. I think he was really busy early on in my life, and then once he retired, he loosened up big time, and I started working with him, doing some yard work at Mia's house and at his house, and so we got close that way. Through all that, he really loosened up and had a great relationship. He was pretty funny. You could tell he was a refined bank executive in a lot of ways. A really fun guy to be around. One that loved to go to games and whatnot. And so we had a lot of run time with him at basketball and football games. And those were some good years for basketball. But yeah, it was really fun. And then Grandpa Hool, different personality, still really inspiring. And, he's funny in his own right, too, but it was a different relationship. And his was a great example of like what to do and the person to be in a lot of ways, too.
Very diplomatic answer. Been accused of being Switzerland before. Oh, and then one thing I need to mention, too, is Brad has a superpower that he had. I don't know if he had any power over it, but he has chinchilla hair.
I do.
And it got product. It is the softest hair you can imagine. We kid a lot about that. What are some stories that kind of pop into your mind, Brad?
So, like I said, with Grandpa Lou, as soon as I started working with him, that my relationship started changing.
What kind of a taskmaster was he?
Yeah, he was actually a lot of fun to work with. And you could always bank on going to get something good to eat after. Like working with you. I look forward to working with you on Saturdays because it meant we were going to go somewhere. And he was easygoing, but he required a lot. And I worked my guts out on some of those projects. Some of the projects, he and I would actually work together. And then over time, he just had me doing the gardening and whatnot. Really high standard, but just a little bit different. But it was fun working side by side with him on some projects. I was thinking about on the way over here, just working on the basketball hoop. We loved playing basketball in the front yard. And for years, we had a terrible... Well, we would just abuse it. We'd stick rakes and whatnot, and the rakes would snap in half to keep it up. He was a big part of hammering, chiseling out the old concrete and digging the hole. One time he jumped in the hole and then his knees gave out and he couldn't get out. So we had to help him out. The first sign of his older age. One of my favorite stories about Grandpa Lou is going out to that Weaver State game and going to McDonald's after. I want to say this is when I was like a junior or senior in high school, but going up there and ordering some shakes, a McFlurry, and him correcting me in front of the whole line and saying, "It's a McFluffy, you clown." And
I don't know words.
Seriously, but it even got me and everybody else in the line was looking a little closer at the menu he was so sure of himself. He didn't want to argue with the guy. He was so certain. But like kind of goofy, fun stories like that. Just, a lot of fun. And the fact that, I would go with my buddies over to their place to go watch movies.
What did they think or look?
Get along great. They loved having people over, and then they had a movie library. That was had a bunch of different movies. And
Talking about the treat closet.
yeah, the treat closet was really good. It was locked for a lot of my childhood, but it loosened up as the years went on.
Did you find ways to get around the lock?
Yeah, we would look. Yeah, that's what we would do. Is the toy closet was locked too. You're spending your time looking for the key for the treat closet.
So what sort of cornucopia of treats would be in the treat?
Rolos were always there. I don't know if that was because they loved Rolos or nobody else liked Rolos, but Rolos were always there. P&Ms, Twizzlers, Neds.
What other kind of stories kind of pop in your mind?
Just hanging out in the patio. A lot of driveway patio. It was a huge patio. I think it was like 20 feet by 40 feet. And a lot of seating, comfortable seating. And then it's just awesome. Lots of shade in the summer, but, nice and cool in the afternoon and evening. And they love just hanging out there and just chatting. The wind chimes, 3 sets of wind chimes. Yeah, lots of hummingbirds and all sorts of other birds coming through. But yeah, a lot of good times on that patio chatting with them over the years.
What about with Kandamar with Grandpa Hank?
Yeah, Grandpa Hank, like I said, he was a great example. Super successful in his career. I hear about it all the time. Now I rub shoulders with Spence, and Spence is in the same kind of world as Grandpa Hank. And it's just interesting to see a lot and hear a lot of people still that talk about, his work ethic and who he was and how he carried himself. He served a bunch of missions when I was growing up. And, it was an interesting thing as a kid. You want to get, toys for your birthday. And I got books. And at the time, it wasn't super great. But honestly, it was a good example. And they were trying to set the tone of what was really important. And I think it wasn't too much time that went by that I appreciated that and really kind of understood why they did it, and always would have a great note in the front of the book that they would give you. But yeah, we went one time. They were great about having us over to the house and for like sleepovers and whatnot. But then they took us on a Southern Utah trip one time, and it was actually a lot of fun, but it was quirky. They were great, though. We stopped at Cove Fort and went to a bunch of historical buildings in St. George and did a bunch of stuff down there. We hung out with the Greens.
Yeah, listen to like a 24 cassette.
Yeah, we did.
Joseph and the colored code or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, they love going to plays. I never loved going to plays. I think they kind of felt like, hey, we were gone quite a bit, and so we're going to put some effort into some real intentional effort into doing some things with all the grandkids.
What kind of lessons about fatherhood do you think that your grandfather, either grandfather, what have you learned that's helped you as a father?
Well, definitely hard work from both of them. But it was interesting. Grandpa Lou was pretty dynamic in my eyes. And like I said early on, going over there, they were a little uptight, with the toy closet, which we would just destroy, the treat closet. They really loosened up. And Grandpa Lou and Mormor, they were all about family all the time.
Kind of a me casa, su casa.
Absolutely. He just was constantly doing stuff for us, for Mia, for, Canapuses, everybody. They were just constantly just kind of, and they were so proud. Grandpa Lou was so funny. He'd go over there and he'd ask you the same questions over and over again. One of them that came up a lot for me was, how much do you weigh? He was just fixated on weight. That's a good weight for you.
Yeah, that's a good weight. Are you losing some weight?
Yeah, right. I couldn't gain weight all through high school.
Kind of funny. So, what do you think you learned from both grandfathers?
Yeah, a lot. Really, it was fun to interact with Grandpa Lou. Everybody in the family loved Grandpa Lou. and it shows that there's, a dozen names. Yeah. That's really fun, a huge compliment to Grandpa Lou, right? But he was a pretty optimistic guy too, and always wanting to, listen to what was going on, but give you advice. I think a lot of people went, to get advice along the way.
I think he was curious.
Yeah, he was.
But it was a good curiosity, not a...
It wasn't a judgmental.
No, I think the older that he got, the less judgmental. He would have initial strong opinions about some things, and then I'd have to go talk to him and say, did you think about this, or did you think about that? And he'd go. And to his credit, if I made sense, he would back off. And then he had this wonderful ability to initially oppose certain ideas and then embrace them as his own later down the road. But anyway, yeah. I think that and another thing that I think could be said about both of your grandfathers is they came from fairly rugged family lives. My dad's dad was an alcoholic, and was kind of a sad alcoholic in what my dad said, and he had virtually no relationship. It was crazy. And so then he did a 180 and became the sort of father and the sort of grandfather. He didn't know his grandfather at all, and his grandfather passed away, a long time ago. I just think that it's interesting that I don't think that it's necessarily DNA driven, that you're either a good grandpa or a bad grandpa. And I think, especially with Lou, that he improved. He aged like fine wine as he got older. And he wasn't perfect, but he was so darn funny.
Yeah.
And he was quirky, but quirky in a really
endearing way,
a very endearing way. And he kind of knew it.
I totally knew it. Yeah.
He owned it. And so, I think that, I just think that, there's many roads that lead to Rome as to, how to be a good grandparent. And there's not just one size fits all. And I think that as I think about things, what Lou did and what Hank did is they played to their strengths. And Hank, for instance, had this incredible story. He was born in Amsterdam. And then during World War II, he was too young to be taken to factories and stuff like that. But he had to really struggle to get food for, his mom and his family. And it was under very difficult circumstances. And then, he was able to eventually emigrate to the United States. And I don't think he even had finished, he had not finished high school. And so he graduated from the U, and Lou, my dad, the first college graduate. And I think that they both were the recipients of great gifts coming from marrying above their station. Both Grandpa Hank and Grandpa Lou married incredible women who kind of helped guide them nicely without being shrewish or anything like that. Do you think that Lou had, and also, with Hank, if you had to say what kind of superpower they had?
Yeah, it's hard to put my finger on maybe or name it with both of them, but just I think with Grandpa Hool is hard work and just like putting his mind to something and just making it happen. And then with Grandpa Lou, a little bit of that, but just he had this charisma that was a little bit of the superpower, like you were kind of talking about a second ago. He just kind of owned his quirkiness, but in a really charismatic way that was really endearing. I think that was one of his superpowers, but I think the reason why it was endearing and the reason why it was, we loved the quirkiness is because we knew how much he was interested in us and how curious he was and how that was his focus was, family and everybody. I think everybody probably has a similar relationship as I did with Grandpa Lou.
But he managed, I can speak with more particularity with Lou.
Yeah.
Being my father, but he had a way of kind of having these different relationships with each of the kids. And we were the lucky recipients of living about a mile away. We are right next door, but you just jump on your bike or jump in the car and you're there in a minute or two.
That's all. It was really fun, and it was great to be so close. So I think we definitely benefited from that. And I think they loved having us over all the time.
This is kind of a fun thing that maybe you don't know, but he used to love to have me go down each child and kind of talk about them. And he just, he just knew a lot of stuff. In fact, one time he said to me, this was kind of eerie. He said, Steve, he says, I know a lot more about your kids in some instances than you do. So are you calling me out or, it's about how I'm doing something bad? And he did it with kind of a smile on his face. But the way that I interpreted it was that I have had lots of conversations with your kids and they felt comfortable talking to me. And he took that as he was really good about not betraying confidences and stuff like that. He was quite diplomatic that way too. One of the things that I think my mom and dad, Brad's grandparents on June Harris did is they had these wonderful events. And one of our favorite events was the 4th of July. Do you want to describe the 4th of July? We called it the Cul-de-Sac of Fire.
Yeah, it was really fun because Grandpa Lou got so into it. I mean, he was OCD in a lot of ways, right? And so he'd have the Rubbermaid white plastic chairs set up perfectly spaced in, stadium seating on the front lawn, and he'd be popping popcorn with that popcorn cart that I eventually broke. I still feel terrible about. Popsicles in the cooler, and then he'd be blaring music, patriotic music, some John Philip Sousa from the garage. And it was this big event, like you're saying, and we'd have a barbecue before, we'd grill hot dogs and burgers, and then we'd do the Cul-de-Sac of Fire. And Ken and Chase and I we'd all be the ones to light the fireworks.
Fire master.
Yeah, exactly. And it was a lot of fun. Those are great memories, and it's been fun moving into our own place. It's been fun to try to carry that forward. So we've been doing something similar in our neighborhood for a while.
That's a big deal.
It's become a big deal. It's been really fun, and we get other neighbors involved, and we try to bring everybody in, and popcorn and popsicles and music. Yeah, I've got a mix, and of course it has some John Philip Sousa stuff on there, and it's just really fun. But yeah, Grandpa, I think if he went all out on the fireworks and tried to get some good fireworks, but it's kind of fun. I think it'd bring a smile to his face that we're going to Evanston, Wyoming to get a few more, the big ones.
Put his to shame.
It would. And this is back, to be fair, this is back when you couldn't get anything more than a fountain.
Yeah.
But it's been really fun to have some of these bigger fireworks, and he loved being patriotic. And I think of all like the decorations in their house. We have some of their decorations, by the way, some of their 4th of July decorations, but their whole house would be decked out. It was almost year round. They had a ton of stuff.
Every holiday,
but somehow, like, I feel like the American flags and, some of that stuff,
red, white, and blue.
The red, white, and blue stayed up all year round, which was kind of fun. So, but yeah, good times, right?
Very good times. I've got kind of a goofy question for you here. Yeah, maybe a final question. If Grandpa Lou was here and Grandpa Hank was here, who's to say that they are? What would you say to both of them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've been thinking about both of them a lot. Work's been tough lately, and I know that they were both real successful. And I've been thinking a lot about, like, what would you guys do in a situation like this? I'd love to pick their brain and see if there's something I'm missing or something I should be thinking about or doing. I don't know. It's I love both of their advice. It was actually really fun with Grandpa Hool. So we didn't live as close to Grandpa Hool, but I was going up to you for school, and that was a great place to just stop all the time. If I had like a late night class, go have dinner with Grandma and Grandpa Hool, and it was 5 minutes from campus, and they were fantastic. And that was actually a really great thing for my relationship with both of them, actually, was, being able to stop in and grab dinner and chat with them. They're obviously really interested how everybody's successful too. It was just a different dynamic. But yeah, I loved being able to share things with them and pick their brain and get their along the way. And so I think it would be more of the same. I don't know if I can pin down one question for you.
Did you feel like you got unsolicited advice, or was it moderated, or did it depend?
It's funny. Later in their years, it was more unfiltered. If you get called it's a McFluffy, you clown. Sometimes you get some of that from both sides. But yeah, it was still a great relationship later on too. And so maybe a little less solicited as years went on, but always appreciated.
Okay, final question. As you think about the people, and right now, there's not very many, but we have fond hopes that it's going to grow and grow and grow. There's going to be this wonderful community of grandfathers looking to up-level. Speaking as a grandson to this kind of mass of grandpas who are eager to maybe up-level and improve their grandpa game, what bits of advice would you have for them?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's relationship is different and personalities are different. And I think you said it well, that Grandpa Lou and Grandpa Hool played to their strengths. Both are great, but both were very interested in what was going on in everybody's life. I just think that curiosity and whatnot means the world as a teenager, that somebody's interested in what you're doing and what's going on, and somebody's following up with you. And so I think just that curiosity coupled with your own personal brand or flair, right?
So this may get edited out, but I just want to tell you how much I and what a wonderful son,
yeah,
and what a wonderful grandson you were to my dad. That's it for today's episode of the Grandpa Channel. Until next time, keep the mic hot, the memories fresh, and the jokes slightly inappropriate. I'm out of here. I gotta go take a nap.